For the WHO, a conflict exists if the expert has a financial interest that could unduly influence the expert's position with respect to the subject matter being considered, and if that interest left a reasonable person uncertain. WHO's rules in 2002 and 2004 required declarations to be filled out relating to possible conflicts going back 3 years. If there is a conflict, advisors are supposed either not to take part at all, to stay out of sensitive discussions, or to take part but to have their conflicts of interest disclosed. So you don't know if those specific individuals filled out declarations of interest forms?
Declarations of interest were asked for from all participants, yes.
And do you know if those specific individuals signed a declaration of interest form?
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they did, but I'm not 100% sure.
The WHO has told us that a declaration of interest statement exists relating to the 2002 and 2004 antiviral and vaccine meetings. But WHO Director General Margaret Chan's office refuses to release to us any details of the declarations.
We have to balance all the time the privacy of the individual versus the robustness of the guidelines.
The declarations of interest were taken, then arguably you could find out whether they did have conflicts of interest.
I really, that's something that I would have to investigate and get back to you on. I really can't answer that at this point.
I'm the customer, if you like, for WHO guidelines as a patient. If I don't understand what competing interests might have influenced the way that they came out, then it's of no interest to me at all that Margaret Chan knows what they are. I need to know as the customer for her products, and her products are guidelines.
In its latest advice on influenza antivirals and vaccines, the WHO has published declarations of interest. We now know, for example, that Professor Arnold Monto has recently received between $3,000 and $10,000 in consultancy work for GSK. Professor Hayden too declares his work as an unpaid consultant for both companies, among others. The WHO recently described potential conflicts of interest as inherent in any relationship, but says that it protects against undue influence. Yet a new Council of Europe report into last year's swine flu pandemic also raises concerns about transparency at the WHO and the risks of undue pharmaceutical company influence.
There will be people who interact with industry. That's perfectly acceptable. We need to have good interaction between industry and public health industry with clinical medicine. But to be paid consultants, to be people who are actually on the payroll, to be people who actually published or spoken at promotional events for the company, I think that really is way too far over onto the unacceptable side of things.
The WHO has launched an internal inquiry into its handling of the recent pandemic, which will include transparency issues, but it's not due to report until next year. Until then, at least, doubts will remain over the ability of this United Nations body to make impartial decisions on behalf of the rest of the world.